even set myself up. I'm still in the middle of setting this up as I enter into the minds of madness. Amber gives me my mwahaha in the background. It's about as menacing as Julie over here with her big chainsaw. I swear I'll get a window open with HC Realms at one point, but that's not how we start the show, is it? We start the show with my nonsense most of the time, don't we? So why don't we do that? We do that usually. So, hey, HC Realms is open. Aren't I just responsible? All right. So how's my day been? Well, hasn't been much since yesterday. As we remember yesterday, I kind of left off with the Penguin team, which was interesting. But ultimately, good but futile. Didn't feel good. Something about it just didn't feel right. It felt okay. I'm not gonna lie. It probably was cobbled together, but it felt cobbled together. Either way, Street Fighter V progress. Definitely better than I was yesterday. After the show last night, I kicked it a couple rounds. Turns out I'm down to 770 league points. So I hit 2 games, 2 matches before we got here. And I'm back up in the 800s, but I'm still not doing well at Street Fighter V, man. It might be back time to turn to like Marvel vs. Capcom or something. I don't know. I think I'm getting to that point where it's like I'm tired of playing the same character, but if I play a different character, I start losing, and that really gets down on my soul. I think that's one of the big things that's keeping me away from my team in Heroclix. This is that drawing parallels thing I like to do a lot. What else has happened? Well, there's a couple things that came out today as far as announcements. I'm not going to go in depth because that's a Meta Lab thing that we do. But very quickly, Alliance news got leaked, as it often does. There's some interesting news. There's some unfortunate news. And I may have to stop the fun game I've been playing of trying to or butchering the phrase Dr. Doom in different languages, as it turns out Dr. Doom will not be in the set that he made. Seriously, guys. That's the end of that. But another big announcement got made. Really awesome announcement. It's weird because some comic nerds seem to think that this is weird to them. And it's not that weird because there's so much crossover in this game to this fandom, and I have been ruined. My awesome thing here that I was planning on doing has been completely and utterly demolished by an ad. The same thing that I make money on in this, but today, WizKids Games announced that they made a deal with World Wrestling Entertainment in order to bring them into the Dice Masters and Heroclix franchises. The possibilities are endless. And once again, I'm going to go more in detail about this on the Meta Lab. I'm super, super excited. Now, there's a couple people going, and like I said, I'm going to take those naysayers. I'm going to take them to task. I'm going to make them look silly. I'm going to just show them that they don't watch the product and they're not familiar with the product because they're whining too much. But that said, there is so much crossover between Heroclix players and pro wrestling fans that it's almost a natural thing. Now, there are some players of Heroclix who are super uber nerds that lean the Star Trek side. I find there's a significantly larger audience to pro wrestling. Now, a lot of them aren't fans of our podcast per se. The more like over at Clicked Off, they have a gigantic crossover pro wrestling Heroclix fandom, along with the Shots Fired podcast. But I'm sorry, guys, I am a fan of pro wrestling, and I understand that it is staged and scripted and all of that stuff, but you have to understand that I also see it as interactive theater. This is actually something somebody else said, and you got to look at it this way: is if I shout at a wrestler in a ring, he reacts to it, and that's if I'm at a live show. And the general vibe is that the feeling and the emotion driven towards the wrestlers and everything like that actually drives the way the show goes. It's a long breakdown that I could get into some other time. I'm not going to do it here right now. I'm going to do it after we've done the episode of the Metal Lab. But in true blue honesty, I am a pro wrestling fan. I do enjoy watching me some pro wrestling, and I am not ignorant to the fact that it is staged. Let's just clear that air now. Is that air clear? It's beautiful. It's beautiful. But I do also want to point out that Justin Zirin was nice enough to... He was so cheeky. A while back, myself and Amber, with our daughter, went to a wrestling event called Slammiversary. Those of you unfamiliar with wrestling, WWE is not the only producer of pro wrestling. Now, we started the show with a vantage point that we were later told by the security guards that we had to move from. Everything got fixed for us later on as I was carrying my daughter in a very awkward position, and one of the managers took us to a better place. Anyway, long story short, where we were, the vantage point we had, the Slammiversary ring had yellow ropes. What else has yellow ropes? That's right, the Whiz Kids boxing ring from the Superman and Muhammad Ali collector kit, or the con exclusive kit. Now, from the distance and the angle Amber was at, the ropes themselves made a similar formation as the grid that you see on that wrestling ring. And Justin Zirin made a comment in Amber's post about it. Now, this is not to say we are driving that discussion. In fact, in the midst of us rehashing that whole discussion, Justin had said that they were in the final draft of the discussion. I'm just kind of looking for Amber for nods of yes, they were in the final draft of the discussion and the contract setup with WWE. Apparently, this has been a long time want for them, and I don't blame them. Whether you like to believe it or not, there is a large group of people very familiar with the product that the WWE creates, and they are not absent from comics. Boom Studios is actually a creator of a WWE comic book. Now, granted, those stories are still based on the pro wrestlers. There's some grounding in reality to a certain degree, but they're in comic books, so deal with it. Ninja Turtles are in comic books. They were in comic books first, even. So, and I think the best description I heard about pro wrestling recently, it was like, it's anime for rednecks. Perfect. Beautiful. I love that description. It's fun. And I'm actually really looking forward to it, because I want you to look at what happens in a pro wrestling ring and tell me that it's not comic bookish. Like, so many ridiculous things occur in the midst of a pro wrestling match, and the fighting style itself is almost comic bookish, to the point where I watched Luke Cage season 2. I am planning on watching Iron Fist season 2. Deal with it. I watched Luke Cage season 2, and I turned to Amber immediately. I said, it looks like he's been learning how to be a pro wrestler, because that is like a strong man, a Hulk or a Luke Cage type character really kind of benefits from moving around like a pro wrestler, because they move around like they're stronger than they are. They get bumped around in the ring, like they take punches and everything like that, like a man significantly bigger is knocking them around. So there you go. It's comic booky. How much money do we? I'm overselling it at this point, and I just can't say how excited I am for what's coming from the WWE and Whiz Kids together, because it isn't just Heroclix. It is also, I might actually start playing Dice Masters again, just so I can say the Macho Man attacks in Dice Masters. And I'm not going to say it like that. I'm going to say it like, the Macho Man attacks you, bro. Actually, I have this nasty habit of like switching between Macho Man and Hulk Hogan somewhere in the middle. But, ooh, yeah, Macho Man attacks. Macho Man blocks. I buy a Macho Man dice. I'm looking forward to how much fun, and, there's so much possibility for the design that I want. Again, I'm going to spend more time on the Metal Lab talking about, because the show has been suffering for content, and there is so much content this week for us to talk to. I love it. I love it. I know a lot of old school wrestling fans have said this. I'm going to break hearts now. If you think Jimmy Superfly Snuka is coming, you might want to think again. He is something of a murderer. or at least accused of, and was not tried because he was too old and senile, and then later passed away. Like it's not a happy story, and he's probably not somebody we want to be. You know, there's a lot of controversy behind the character. I mean, Hulk Hogan is still dealing with his. So, I mean, pro wrestlers in general are all controversial. So, who am I kidding? Are we gonna see things? Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. We might not even see the Macho Man as excited as I am about the idea of a Macho Man character. It will depend on, and this is the next step I wanted to go to, because I did want to lead this into another discussion that a lot of players, I don't think, and this is not Metal Lab, this is kind of for this show where I spend a lot of time talking about high-level stuff, and then eventually get to building some teams and whatnot. If you're live with us in the chat, I'm stretched for ideas. So if you want me to build around something, let's see what we can do. But in the meantime, I want to just address the idea that people seem to think that for some reason, WizKids ultimately makes a lot of decisions and like the final decision on what comes into a set. And that is a misconception at its finest. And allow me to explain. Now, I want anybody to think of a game, and I think I've had this discussion with people, with other people in the past, but I want you to imagine and tell me what game, based on a third-party product, and I'm talking like not being made by the producer of said product, is still going after 10 plus years. Now, I'm going to break a couple hearts. Pokemon is not currently made by a third party anymore. It was initially designed by a third party in Wizards of the Coast, but was then taken back over by the Pokemon Company, the guys that do make Pokemon. Magic the Gathering is a first-party product made by Wizards of the Coast, currently owned by Hasbro, so still ultimately the same company is making it, even though they are under different management. It's still the same company, and it is their IP. Yu-Gi-Oh! There's a weird correlation between, like, both of them were kind of made and of the same. They're codependent. That's the word I'm looking for. They are codependent. So the card game, the anime exists to sell the card game. The card game exists to sell the anime. They're codependency. And originally were created by Konami. Upper Deck, taken over, back over by Konami. Once again, same thing with Pokemon, currently run by the first party. So then, what licensed product has lasted 10 plus years as a collectible game and sustained this long? Heroclix. That's about it. The Versus system has made a resurgence, but it is not the same product. And it's hardly a collectible product anymore. It's a big box product. So like I buy the box, I got the product. It's a LCG, living card game. So it's like every single product that comes out gives you everything you need all at once, and nobody is like, if I buy box A and you buy box A, we both are at par. And then you buy box B and you buy box B, and we're both at par. And that's a cool way, but it's not a sustainable product model. It's a short-term license-based product model that kind of gets you there when you need to get there now and maintain a license. It's Fantasy Flight has made a Star Wars living card game. There's a Cthulhu living card game. There's the Versus System living card game. I'd almost call it Legendary an LCG, though I'm not 100% familiar with the game myself, so I might be wrong, and that might be more of a deck-building game. So don't quote me on that one. But anyway, so one of the things as a licensed game maker, and a lot of these companies or these games that just don't exist anymore have discovered as well, is that the game thrives only when the license holder is gentle, right? Or you're able and capable of working around the license holder. Now, WizKids has been doing a fantastic job of Marvel and DC Comics in a long-term sort of thing. They have been diversifying lately by adding the Ninja Turtles, and they've been diversifying more intelligently lately. And by intelligently, I mean they've been taking the player base and listening to them and realizing, hey, guys, when you release something, can we use it in modern tournaments? Because you guys only support modern tournaments these days. I think they're starting to recognize that and have, from here on, like, we haven't had a straight to Golden Age thing short of the Star Trek spaceships. They Think about that one for a second. Do you want the Star Trek spaceships on your Heroclix map in the scale that they're in? No. It's a cool introduction to Heroclix, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't exist in our kind of game space. And honestly, I don't think those products sell particularly well. I think this keeping the ships is a license maintenance thing. And that's kind of why that goes. It's a little cynical in itself, but it is what it is. But where I'm going with this is, as a license holder, Marvel DC gets to say what the licensee, Wiz Kids, gets to put on their product. Now, a couple things. One of which is Dice Masters. Dice Masters can be completely independent of any license that's attached to, because I make the Dice Master card do a Dice Masters thing, and then I try to look across the spectrum of comic book character and say, that guy can do that. And that's it, right? That's all you have to do in order to, you may have to tweak slightly to, like, for instance, there's a Hulk that does damage to everything on the board when it takes damage. I'm sure at some point in Dice Masters it was pay a cost. This character does a bunch of damage. And that got shifted to, let's make this the Hulk and just, when he takes damage, because it's a Hulk thing to do, right? So ultimately, Dice Masters in itself, and it's such an Eric thing to do, doesn't need the theme, but the theme helps sell it. Catch my drift.
This is how Eric makes games.
Heroclix, on the other hand, that's a little bit of a harder sell. If you look at, it's really hard to make a base and just and a special power set and put any character on it. They can't follow that. Ever since they added the cards to characters and the special powers to characters, they basically handcuffed themselves from being unable to do that. You can't do that in that once you start creating these special powers out of nowhere. In the original game, you could predict what each character was going to be based on the standard powers in the game, and you knew what each character was going to have. And there's an argument over, I think the only argument for what we would call comic accuracy in the world of Heroclix that existed on the PAC alone was, is that guy going to have charge or hypersonic? Is that guy going to have running shot or hypersonic? And that was ultimately the only question that really came up, right? So as a license holder, they only have as much control over what people say yes to, if that makes sense. So, and this goes back to my Battle World Boo thing. Unfortunately, WizKids said Dr. Doom, and Marvel said no. WizKids said Dr. Doom, and Marvel said no. WizKids said Dr. Doom, and Marvel said no. Sorry, even worse is Disney said no. You can't let them do that. It's like, I mean, I don't think the paperwork is fully completed on the Disney Fox deal. And there's still a certain number of things that have to happen before that deal is just completely finished. And we can accept that Fantastic Four and everything like that is a part of the WizKids universe. We have recently had Fantastic Four #1 recently. I said recently twice there, sorry. Arrive on the shelf. So they're revamping that comic. Cool. But Heroclix works at a pace of a year ago, right? And I think, was Battle World last year? 2 years ago?
2 or 3.
Fact checking with Amber. So her voice is only so loud. I don't know if you guys could hear her. So 2 or 3 years ago with Battle World. This is the pace of Heroclix, right? Now, granted, I still feel like Battle World is going to be a better What If set than What If was. I'm confident in that. Because so many What Ifs were based around the Fantastic Four and X-Men anyway. Because they have so many what if possibilities. I think one of the what ifs was, what if Reed Richard had become Dr. Doom? Right? So imagine, if you will, that world. So with all that, as a player, as a couple, I have spoken briefly about WWE Clicks. I said I'm excited, but I'm not going into great detail today. That's Monday's show will cover that, and I'm sure some of our patrons on Sunday at our patron hangout will be asking questions in regards to that, and we might do some fantasy building, as it were, for that as well. I'm also, here's a little bit of a spoiler. I'm planning on writing an article for Majestic for their for the not Apex Insiders portion of the site, where it's like my wish list / predictions for the WWE clicks. Anyway, where I was going with this is I've seen people like, oh, we have WWE clicks, but we don't have Naruto clicks. Well, let me tell you a couple of reasons. They don't have a license for Naruto. Is Naruto part of the Nickelodeon deal? I don't know how Naruto works as far as that is concerned, or who's in charge of that. I would expect Avatar before I would expect Naruto, if that kind of helps set reality into place for people. Where they have made a deal with Nickelodeon to do some cool things. Hey, here's Ninja Turtles. That's been our Nickelodeon thing so far. There could be some to go. Who knows? But what else? Baritone. I wonder if that was an autocorrect. Anyway, but Naruto is not that. Okay. And there's independent comics that don't independent comics that they have made Heroclix about. And part of that are the licensees saying, or license holders saying yes. A lot of people seem to mistake whose job is what at Heroclix, at WizKids. And let's kind of give everybody a high level. Too many people give Justin Zirin a little too much credit for game design. And Justin Zirin has been doing a fantastic job at the high level, allowing us to continue to maintain a Marvel DC license while at the same time acquiring us the licenses for such things as Nickelodeon, WWE, and any other future things that we might see. Star Trek even, deal with Paramount. I mean, part of these, he's talking, I'm sure, with guys who work at NECA Toys. That's a good license holder, but he still has to have a conversation with these things. So what I'm saying is Justin Zirin's doing a fantastic job getting us cool things that Heroclix are going to be made out of, and game designers who I think currently, I don't know who the game designers are, they're doing a good job. I got to give them credit. They're doing a pretty good job right now, given what we're seeing. If you go look at PJ Boland's newest article on the paid portion of the Apex Insider site, he breaks down the metagame, and there's quite a few different variations of teams in the current game. And I don't think enough people give them credit for the fact that that is available in the current game right now. You may only see a certain variance of them, but there's only so much. Anyway, so what I'm saying is Justin Zirin's job is to say, I got this game, and I think your product would be great in this game. And the license holder says, no, we're not into that product, or you know what, we have somebody making that product for us, right? It's kind of a sketchy detail with the Lord of the Rings, where it's like they had the Lord of the Rings for a bit, but it was a pre-painted product. And it's not necessarily the same thing as Games Workshop's product. But then we haven't seen Lord of the Rings in a little while because Games Workshop still kind of has that product license, I think. And I like there might have been some some cosmic loopholes in the contract and whatever, which is probably why we don't see any more of that. Or there was probably like an end-to-end and somebody missed a certain loophole and somebody got angry at another place. I'm not going to point fingers, point names, point whatever. But ultimately, Zirin says, what do you think? They say yay or nay. And then we get our Heroclix from the game designers based on what he can acquire. Now, I feel like if I was part of the game design team currently at WizKids Games, I would be a kid in a candy store with the pro wrestling because there is so much that they could do with that. And lately, he's been keeping the game fresh. We are no longer just a Marvel DC world, and it does I feel like he's still managing to maintain the DC license. I don't know if you guys have noticed. There's been a massive reduction in the amount of DC we're kind of getting in, right? I think we've had one DC set per year because I think last year we had Harley Quinn and maybe Joker's Wild, and then this year we had Batman the Animated Series, and that's it, right? And then next year, there's no word on anything, but we do know that Earth X is still around the corner. Battle World's still around the corner. And we also know that X-Men Adventures is around the corner. Based on the animated series, we all thought Justice League Unlimited was going to be the thing. Who saw X-Men Adventures coming? So, long and the short of it is, I don't know how, but he's doing a fantastic job of talking these guys into some awesome stuff, and I'm really looking forward to everything they have to offer. All right, so that is my pre-show ramble, as it were. I still have some more things I would like to discuss at some point, but that's kind of what I do to start the show. Because as we enter the Madden of Madness, you have to know that there's garbage in here, and I have to let that garbage out. And that's generally how I'm going to let the start each show, is I'll let the garbage out, right? I am still continuing on my weight loss and healthy planning, but it is Friday, so once this sugar-free Red Bull is done, my very sugary, carb-filled beer will be taking over my life. I was supposed to switch to whiskey and Coke Zero, but that was that awkward silence for you. I brought Juliet back for those of you who weren't paying attention. I couldn't believe how many people told me, like in personal private, like my own personal Facebook got friended, and people were like, I miss Juliet. It's like, okay, I guess I can angle the camera slightly so that you see the girl from Lollipop Chainsaw. Very underrated video game, and I think I'm going to say that every time I mention her. Play this video game. It is super fun. It is from the Xbox 360 PS3 era, so please tell me you have those systems handy. All right. But I do want to start addressing now in the chat. If you got a figure you want me to talk about, let's talk about it. But unfortunately, Mr. Eric Atkinson, the new Con Ellie Batman has been discussed on this very show. I believe it was either the first or the second episode. I can't remember which. But I have spent a little bit of time on him. Long story short, Commissioner Gordon is super cool, and I really like playing him in my fun friend games, but I don't see, like, I see some work that he could be doing in the grand scale game, or in the competitive game. I have a habit of calling that the grand scale game, but it's a not yet kind of situation. There's a lot of things that just beat him down a lot, and it's kind of where it is. Okay, so let's go where we were last night. Where were we last night? We were fooling around, and this is what our nonsense came up with. So I'm just going to let you guys take a look at it in a second, and I'll talk about it very briefly. Now, some of my best teams have started this way, and that is as a joke. Also, I was looking at a question that somebody had asked about Jack Frost, so ignore that. But one more time with the story. On this past Monday's Meta Lab, our great patron, the one who's been there since the beginning, Michael Fedor, he asked a question comparing the uncommon penguin with the prize penguin, and we ultimately came to the conclusion about why not both. And then went a little further and said, why not all four current modern penguins? And then why not put them in Iceberg Lounge with a Poison Ivy and either a Scarecrow or two of the 30-point Jokers? This was a fun team until the opponent took a turn. And then everything fell apart. I still am in mad love with Seals, but I do think one of the smarter things I did with this team was make use of Puffins. I used two Puffins, 2 Seals in my practice round. And the Puffins were adding extra smoke cloud for the Poison Ivy to put her plants up in. It wasn't doing enough damage in comparison to a lot of other teams similar to this. But it was some of the most fun I've had with a team like this. And somebody has answered my prayers in the chat today. And we're going to talk about Skeets today. Skeet. Now, Skeet comes in 2 possible point variations, either 35 or 115. 115 points is not an out-of-the-question build. I'm sorry, I'm banging my desk, and that's probably the most annoying noise to some of you. But Skeets is probably the most underestimated character in the current metagame. For a number of reasons, but most importantly is the fact that he is not easy to kill. Now, you look at the first part of the dial, and this is unfortunately what everybody starts looking at. So I'm going to look at this. This is a 35-point dial for Skeets. Now, if your opponent paid 135 points, this is not all there is, and understand that. Now, his trait is related to whether or not you pay 135 or 115 points for it, which means the red KO line is KO line if he's 35 points. At 115 points, it is not. And he also has a monster keyword at 115 points. But this is a click that everybody sees and mostly assume very non-threatening, right? But what he turns into is pretty exciting. Now, his special movement power, adjacent-friendly characters modify attack by +1. If that character's name Booster Gold, modify attack by +2. The Booster Gold thing is if you happen to choose to use Booster Gold. I personally don't think that the team that uses Skeet is going to use Booster Gold for that. But that +1 attack is fantastic. It is great. All right, so let's look at 115-point Skeet now. Ignoring those first two clicks, though those first two clicks are where you start the game, and I want everybody to be aware of that as well. All right, so we have Sidestep on the first of 3 stop clicks. Also, stop is part of his damage power. What that means is he is not susceptible to Surtur. Surtur does not one-shot him with extra damage. Surtur does, though, take him down to click 4 on the first attack because of the penetrating damage after the fact. That's something you just have to suffer for. He also can't be healed past the red line. All right? So do recognize that as well. He's got a special damage power on these last 3 clicks. Skeets can use Penetrating Psychic Blast with a range value of 9. When he does, after actions resolve, give an action token to all hit targets. He has 2 targets with his range replaced to 9. He is colossal as well as part of this, but he is not quintessence. So be aware of that. So when you first take the hits, he's only sidestepping, but hopefully you've got him in a reasonable position. Very easy to do because he's tiny. He does not start the game completely useless. He just starts the game as a 100% fully, undeniably support character. Like, you cannot deny that Skeets is 150% support character at the start. +1 attack and enhancement for some kind of range attacker. All right, so what do we do from here? We'll start building with Skeets. So we have 115 points. Now, what do we have to do with this 115 points? We have to ask ourselves. Well, we have to keep it alive, but we can't do it by healing. I don't like that because he's got the monster keyword, and Dr. Frankenstein is probably one of the best healers in the game. All right, I'll get over it. He is indomitable, which is an important element as well. And I'm just kind of looking him over. So let's start the keyword search first. And I don't want to start with monster because that's my go-to, and we know there's a lot of options there. I want to experiment first. I want to experiment with what's modern from the future. So what's from the future in the modern Heroclix game? Heroes in the Half Shell was the second Ninja Turtle set. That's still legal, if I remember correctly. So Renatilli is not out of the question. Armagon, also not out of the question, though less of a range attacker. As he can make a close attack when he's double targeted. You want him in close. What else do we have here? Golden Skull, not a bad option. I have to look at his tokens. Do his tokens have range? Anybody in the chat? Let me know. Mighty Thor, nothing super jumping out at me as far as competitive play. We do have to remember we're looking at supporting future characters. If that helps anybody on why I'm kind of skimming through some guys that might be pretty good but not quite good enough. All right, so I'm starting to put some thought into this here, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, nope, that's not the one. There was one of the con exclusives something about keeping them alive. I feel like I'm wrong. Or at least one of the legal con exclusives. Doesn't seem to be. Okay. But this is, what is it? Empower when an opposing character within 6 squares makes an attack. Okay. All right. Nope, that's not what I'm thinking. Okay. Sorry, I kind of drifted there. Still looking at the future. Ray, what do you do? Free action. Choose an opposing character within 8 squares until your next turn. If Ray has line of fire to that character can't make attacks. Ooh, that's neat. Batman or this Robin is future with support and Pogs. Could probably use. Okay, so future. I don't know. Did anything jump out at any of you guys in the future? It didn't jump out at me. So we jump back, and you know what? Robot is not dead yet, in my opinion. Let's just see what's available in the robot keyword. So we go to robot, we search. So in talking about Skeets, the 2 most important things to understand is he starts as a support character that's going to make trash characters great. He also turns into something fantastic, and that PD team ability is effectively a what's the word I'm looking for? A +2 in your swing to attack. There's a possible 6 swing in your attack. When I talk about the swing, understand that attack, when I say attack swing, I am not referring to the motion of swinging forward and swinging back and that kind of thing. What I'm referring to is the swing of your attack probability. And what I mean is there is 6 potential, like even though there's the rule of 3, there is still 6 potential points in which you can swing an attack in your favor. You can increase your attack by +3, and then you can subtract their defense by -3. All right, so that's a 6-point swing in your favor because a -1 attack or -1 defense on the dude you're looking at is still a +1 in your favor. If that makes sense. Long, far out game of it. If I have 5 guys who can attack your dude and I subtract your defense by 1, all 5 guys effectively have a +1 swing. So think about that as well. Now, oddly enough, how is it that every character in the Star Trek original series doesn't have future? That whole show takes place in the future, and only one Star Trek character has a future keyword. Nonsense.
Ooh, who has it though?
ROC. Amber just asked, who has it? ROC. And then she just gave me a face like, ugh. All right, so we get next to, I mean, nothing really. Supreme Intelligence doesn't exist anymore. Silvermane, I'm not spending 100 points on that. I'm sorry. Not when I'm spending 115 on Skeets. So Firefall becomes a little bit of a better looker, but still, I don't like him. I'm not a fan of competitive Space Knights. I want to be, but I'm not. Century 459, not going to fit. Then we have this Vision from the starter. We have Cypher from X-Men. Destroyer from Mighty Thor, 175 points. Ugh, that's most of our points. So then that's all of our eggs in 2 baskets. Though Ameridroid could be part of the team. Let's throw him in there. Ameridroid. Oh, this is robot, right? I'm like, why? Sorry. None of the characters from the Star Trek set had the future keyword. And ROC had the robot, because I'm looking at robot right now.
All of that makes so much more sense, Jason.
Terrible. No, it doesn't make more sense because none of the Star Trek characters had future.
Okay, fair. But you weren't looking for future.
Right now, I'm not looking at future. No, I am looking at Beta Ray Bill is a robot. Why did I put the 200-point Ameridroid on this? I'm sorry. I'm apparently bad at this whole show. But that would put me at 255. All right. What's up?
Get your life together.
Who's in charge of me?
Nobody. Problem.
This is problematic. Nobody's in charge of me. All right. Robot Man. It's in his name, so thank goodness.
I would laugh.
Robot Minotaur could be so much better If it didn't have a negative at his point, like if he was 10 points less, I would not complain about him. Super Police? Wish the Bizarro Police was an option. Skyscraper Wonder Woman. Okay, so we have, at least we have, what's the word I'm looking for? Colossal Retaliators, that's a thing. But Future isn't looking good, or Robot isn't looking good either. Guess what, guys? We may have to go monster on this one. Modern monsters. Now, on the plus side, there's room to work here. Monster. It's the Monster Mash. All right. So I do want to keep Dr. Frankenstein as an option, not to heal Skeets, but to perplex him. Because perplex is a good power. I do not want to take Jacob Marley or the Ghost off of the table because I could foresee a weird team that I'm kind of juicing up here. There's an opposing character that Jacob Marley move through. Unique modifier. The chosen character modifies attack by 2 until your next turn. After resolutions, you and the opposing character each roll 2d6. If the result is higher, deal the character 1 penetrating damage. Let's. Who wants to be crazy? Show of hands. Who wants to be crazy? Anyone? Bueller? I'll go back to the screen. We're doing it. We are putting Jacob Marley on a team.
Yes.
Why am I putting Jacob Marley on a team? You ask. I don't know. This is a monster-themed team, though, so deal with it. All right. Next up, I kind of want to put a Shredder on my team. Let's hold off on that because I think I'm making a more functionally control-based team. I don't want to jump to Shredders just yet. So here's my thinking with the Jacob Marley before we move on. My thinking is I need to protect Skeets. And a good way to protect Skeets is dropping my opponent's attack values and possibly damaging them. It's not a bad outcome if you ask me. But then we do have to be aware that keeping Skeets alive is one step. Perplexing dudes is another step, and Jacob Marley is another piece of a puzzle. What we need is something that's worth skeeting around with, as it were, or holding on to, or just making better with Skeets. And I think personal bias might come into effect on this one. Because I think one of the best ranged monster attackers in the point realm that we have available to us is the Goblin King. There, I said it. Now, on the plus side, we also add probability control to our team. Now, we have 45 points still with which to work. It's tricky because I want something that can fight and still, that's also worth keeping around or worth bumping up early game. So another thing worth mentioning about Skeets is he starts tiny. What that means is whoever his range attacker is, you can put Skeets in front of them, and it's very easy to get your PD team ability off on him. What's more, if I decide to go the other way, or once we go the other way and he gets to be colossal, I now just have to move the guy who's making the attacks in front of Skeets, and he's still super potent. So it's kind of why I'm liking the dude, and I want to maintain some degree of range attacker. Now, unfortunately, we've come to this conclusion. Jacob Marley, I liked the idea. I got to get away from you because I do need some more solid attackers, and I think I have found him in Venom Pool. Now, hear me out. Venom Pool, he's 5 range, not a huge range. But here's an important element to Venom Pool. he only allows opposing characters to use probability control once per game. Mr. Graves, I appreciate your love of Clayface, but unfortunately, I'm never going to play with him because I am so bad at making shape change rolls. Anyway, even if they're 4, 5, 6. Venom Pool disallows your opponent any additional probability controls after the first use. He also has probability control somewhere in the middle of his dial. He's got a thick enough dial that having Dr. Frankenstein handy goes a long way long term. Now, he lacks Indomitable. I'm okay with that because I have Dr. Frankenstein. I'm willing to push him just a little. Yeah. Now, so here's one thing that does need to be recognized for this team. Goblin King starts as an attacker, but does not end the game as an attacker. He ends the game either dead or helping keep Skeets going, if that makes any serious or any sense, as it were. In addition to which, what was I going with this? Do not discount the fact that Dr. Frankenstein has a 6 range. Yeah, so am I going to test this? Not likely. I kind of made this on the fly just to kind of highlight a point. Is sometimes a character is a little bit more difficult to build with. Now, before we give up on Skeets, let us include him in a 35-point team or as a 35-point character that may be useful on another team. Let's consider the idea. But what I want to consider, most important, is that, or next thing, is that he does have another keyword, and that keyword is Justice League International. Now, there's a problem with that keyword. They don't make the characters that have that keyword too frequently. So if we were to look at it as is, Justice League International, in the modern age, is this Martian Manhunter even... White Lantern Martian Manhunter, is he still legal, Amber?
I'm not sure on that. I don't know where the comic exclusives...
Okay, either way, even if that is legal, there's Martian Manhunter, Booster Gold, Skeets, and Blue Beetle. That's about it, as far as keywords are concerned. The next thing I have to say, and I won't build the team, but I will open up the consideration of it, is if you build a team without a keyword, make sure you can build a team that doesn't care about the map, because in the current competitive game environment, a lot of players are playing to get the map roll. There's a lot of teams that have really high rolls that can get them the map they want if you don't want the map that they want. You catch my drift, right? So if I'm building a team and I don't care about the map roll, that's fine. That's great. I'm going to build a team that I don't need theme. But if your teams, you start to see that there are maps that beat your team, you cannot give up theme. It's kind of the mentality that you have to follow in the current environment. That is, now, that's not necessarily to say you cannot go without theme. As an example, the team I built for Amber and the team the Australian Heroclix national player won with didn't need theme because he didn't care about the map. Amber's team, same deal. It's the same idea. Space Mikey and Hulk, they don't care about a map. Space Mikey flies, and Hulk leap climbs. That's right. I said it. Because he has leap climb, he is awesome. Only because he can attack after using leap climb. Only because he leap climbs better than everybody else. It's kind of what I'm getting, right? Still susceptible to plasticity and everything like that. So it will be problematic in certain maps, but it doesn't lose in the game. Catch my drift, right? So, that is yeah, so that's kind of the conversation on Skeets. Okay, so I have Mr. Graves here, has mentioned the Clayface Batman. Let's talk about this character and why he always includes it in the middle of my builds, and I feel like he wants me to build with it, and I've been a bit of a jerk and haven't built with it, and I've just been kind of ignoring his pleas to use the character. So let's throw him on the screen and let's talk about him. All right. So Clayface has the wild card team ability, stealth, smoke cloud, toughness, outwit, perplex, ignores elevated and hindering for movement. He's got a +5, so at 50 points, when Clayface would be KO'd, roll d6 and add the number of identity tokens. The result is 6+. Instead of KOing Clayface, replace him with Clayface on click number 6. That power is protected pulse wave. Corporate espionage, Clayface does not count for or against a theme team. With shape change, he's got shape change but succeeds on 4 to 6. When Clayface uses it and succeeds, you may give him an identity token. Now, sorry, I started looking at a chat thing. A character like Clayface is not a build-around figure. This is the prime common Clayface. He is not a build-around character. He is an include because he fills a gap character. And that gap is I have 45 points, and I need something to get in somebody's face as long as they don't ignore shape change. He also has outwit, which helps. But attempting to tell you to build around a character that's 50 points is why I drink. It's not the ideal way to go. It's not the best choice, as it were, like drinking. Drinking water is a good idea, though. So, not to poo-poo on the character, but it's a lot of effort to not include him. To include build around him. But it's not a lot of effort to throw 45 to 50 points where you think there is nothing that can do that can help your 45 to 50 points, or where a body blocker would serve you well. If that makes any degree of sense. The problem with him is that in the current competitive environment, as a body blocker, there are too many colossals that he will not be blocking a lot of fire from. So that's kind of where I stand on this character. Not a bad character, not terrible. Make sure you make use of that wild card, even though you can't wild card Mystics anymore. Tough luck, kids. So I'm not going to say he's objectively bad, but he's not desirable as a lead point. JD Clicks, can we talk about the Blackbird Jet X-Men? Not sure what's on it. And I want to play Just Got a Black. Okay, cool. Blackbird. All right. So let's talk about the Blackbird build and what it is, because I feel like this is one of those things that Eric Atkinson, as far as the Colossal Hulk is concerned, anywhere where I would use a Colossal Hulk, I'd actually prefer to use the Fast Forces Hulk, and I'd prefer to use 3 of them in place of just the one Colossal Hulk. That's kind of why I would say use those 3 guys instead. Just off the top of my head, the Blackbird build that is super familiar with the game right now. If you're planning on building what's being played, you have invested a lot of money investing a lot of money. Because the team currently consists of, you know what? Let's pull it up on HC Realms just so we can get a look. Is the Blackbird on HC Realms? I might be jumping the gun here. Blackbird. Okay, he's cool. He's here. This Blackbird is what a lot of people are playing. 55 points. But they add 5 more points for the dial, the resource dial. So this is now, understand, JD, this is what we're doing. Or sorry, what people are doing. This isn't necessarily the requirement or the only way in which to do it. Of course, we don't have the +5 points for the I think the Quinjet had that, right? Quinjet resource dial. Beauty, 5 points for that. All right, awesome. So this is where your starting point is. Next, Cyclops is on your team. You know why Cyclops is often on your team or is on your team? And I'm not talking any Cyclops. I am talking, there's so many Cyclops I just realized. There's a common, uncommon, super rare, and chase in the set. We want to use the lower point version of the super rare Cyclops. So it puts us at 110. Why do you want to use this? Well, the reason you want to use this is purely on the Blackbird and this part here. Relax. I've survived more jet crashes than any mutant or human alive. When Blackbird is KO'd, wrecked, and a character with the X-Men keyword is the pilot, do not roll the d6, which is usually the damage that you would be taking afterwards. After resolutions, modify that character's combat values by +1 until the end of your next turn. If that character is also named Cyclops, heal him 1 click and modify his combat values by an additional +1, protect the pulse wave. So Cyclops comes out of this thing with a +2 to his stats. Now, the Cyclops doesn't have a lot of clicks of life, but I want you to imagine this first click with +2 to all his stats. Okay, now clean up the vomit and let's continue on because there's a lot going on with this team. All right, next up we have Wolverine. And this is the super rare 50-point version of Wolverine. It happens to have a stop click on its last click. It has charge. It has the ability to use flurry and closer to your opponent's team. We'll get into the details on this guy, but just know people are generally using 2 of this guy. As well, another version has Moira McTaggart. Not just 1, but 2. Is that right? Where am I here? We have this. Now, this is where there's a variation split on the team. Some will play without with this Moira McTaggart, and actually no, hold on. I think the double Moira. Shoot, I'm bad at this team. Bear with me. I have to look something up because there are enough variations on this team that what I'm necessarily putting on isn't the answer. So just give me a brief second to log into. Okay, I'm gonna have to go on the Majestic site because PJ did just put up a bunch of big article describing all of the cool teams that are out in the metagame, but it is part of the paid site, so I can't be giving you access to that on my screen. All right, so we got 2 Wolverines. Oh, okay. So 2 Moiras, Cyclops, 2 Wolverines, a suited henchman. Oh yeah, okay. Suited henchman, pin pocket tank, and a boxing ring. So let's go back to HC Realms here. Boxing bot, boxing ring, suited henchman. Now, what this does, these 2 things do a number of things. Neither of them touch your keywords, which is an important element that we'll get to in a second. And that, as a result of that, they add to your ID card count or ID card character count. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Did I keep the 2 Moiras on the team? Moira, 270. Okay. So Blackbird, Wolverine, Cyclops, 2 Moiras, suited henchman, pin pocket tank, boxing ring. Okay. So now here's. So I don't know. You might be already crapping yourself because if you're familiar with the way the secondary market works, Cyclops ain't cheap. Wolverine is even more or less not cheap. Wolverine, I think, is hitting at about $100 a pop now. And here's where things get a little bit more scary. Because we're not done with Wolverines yet. Next, we include a Wolverine Headmaster ID card. And then we're going to put another Wolverine Headmaster ID card because we need a Wolverine Wanted poster as part of your team. Then we have a Professor X card. I forgot the pin pocket tank. So bear with me here. That's also supposed to be on here. So Professor X card, and then a Cyclops card. All right. And then we also add the Pin Pocket Tank. Now, I hope you have a budget, JD, because this team is probably the most expensive one in the competitive game right now. And we're not even done with ID cards yet. We're just done spending points. Because here's where things get disgusting. The Blackbird ID slot is taken up by the Wolverine Headmaster card. The Suited Henchman's ID slot is taken up by the Wolverine ID card. The Pin Pocket Tanks is taken up by the Wolverine Wanted poster. Am I right here? 1, 2, 3. We might be up 1 ID card. Give me a second to double check PJ's math here. Boxing or Blackbird, Suited Henchman, Pocket Tank. Okay, I think his version on the Majestic side might need a little love because in addition. Okay. Oh yeah, sorry. You don't necessarily need to include all your ID cards from your characters, right? So what do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so we have 8 in his version, which means now these guys, the Cyclops and the Wolverine and the Moira McTaggart. Oh, here's the problem. We're using a Cyclops Headmaster ID. We don't need to do that. No, we do. Okay. I don't know. I'm drunk here. Bear with me. I'm kind of building this off of a sheet. So you do need the Cyclops. That's fair. All right. Let me get my head back wrapped around it. Now, each of Moira McTaggart, Wolverine, and Cyclops share a trait, and that trait is Headmaster X-Men. Headmaster X-Men reads, Leadership, Perplex, but only to target another friendly character with the X-Men keyword. During force construction, you may include a student ID card on your force without adding its cost. So you get free student ID cards, but you're not required to use that, which is why this Cyclops ID works out for you, because you also get access to another Cyclops. Isn't this awesome? We're spending so much of somebody else's money right now. Because here's where things get psychotic. Both your Wolverine ID cards, the Wanted poster and the Headmaster ID card, are going to use the same 50-point Wolverine you have on your team. So we are up to 4 Wolverines on your team. That's $400. Oh, excuse me. And that's not even including the fact that the Headmaster ID costs a fair pretty penny. We're going to have 2 Cyclops IDs on your team because we're going to be using the student ID card that you got with your Blackbird. And I believe we are including, that's right, 2 more of your 50-point super rare Cyclopses. Aren't you excited? I apologize for the sarcasm. The Professor X ID card is going to consist of 2 possible options, either the Brood Professor X or the Mind-Controlling Rare Professor X. Then we have your student IDs, which will also include Rusty and Leech. Now, those don't necessarily have to be the ones you use. That's up to you. You also have access to the student Jean Grey student ID. Okay, so here's the idea. The idea is early game, you bring out some cheap IDs. You just use ID cards a lot, do a bunch of kicking up, and so on and so forth. Now, I'm going to level with you. That is one way of playing it. I have, and I did in the final of a WKO, play against a variation of this, which is probably, and now that I'm done scaring the living pants off of you, probably a little bit more budget friendly. So you level with me and give me a second. Let's first start with the same base thing that we started with before, which was our Blackbird with the resource style, 60 points. All right, I'm cool with that. Couple unavoidable points on this team, one of which is Cyclops. Can't avoid it. Needs to be the pilot of your vehicle, without a shadow of a doubt. Next, I hope you have at least one Wolverine, because I got bad news for you. You need at least one. All right? Now, I'm just going off of the variation that I played against. So you may or may not have this character. The con exclusive, Shadowcat, the 75.1. The reason she works on this, I'm going to pull this up, or the reason she worked for my friend and the guy I played against in the final, Cecil, she's 75 points. She's got a reasonably long dial for a 75-point character. She's not easy to hit. In addition, she's got a trait, adjacent characters that share a named keyword with Shadowcat, modify attack and defense by +1, and one of those named keywords that she has is X-Men. Cool. All right, awesome. In any timeline or released by PR side, there's the second one. Friendly characters named Colossus have passenger 1, but only to carry characters named Shadowcat. And then her special movement power is phasing teleport. When she uses phasing teleport, move 5 squares or less after resolutions close at no cost. All right, so not a bad character. In addition, she gets that extra +1 to dudes who are adjacent to her, which will include your Cyclops and your Wolverine. So we're at a budget version of this. Now, I'm going to say a thing, and I don't want you to take this as the gospel. This one, though, is a must. Moira McTaggart, 25 points, must be on your team. My opponent, now, this was ultimately also his downfall, because Darwin will trigger penetrating or unavoidable damage if an opponent uses an ability that allows them to pick a power. And in the case of my team, I had a Goblin King and I had a Surtur on my team. So I picked the power of Goblin King, attacked Darwin with Surtur. I was up 10 points even after I lost my Surtur. So, as you can imagine, I was okay with that. Why not? Let's do the thing. And that's kind of what things came down to for me, is the fact that Darwin was a bit of a liability against certain teams. So let's kind of go off of where we were there. Let's add a Moira. Now, I want to add a second Moira. 1, she's common. She's easy to get. 2, she's also a headmaster for X-Men. So she adds an additional leadership and perplex to your team, and an additional ID card, because one of the things that this build is lacking is access to ID cards. You have 15 points left over with which to work. Why not throw in... you know what? The suited henchman is an overkill on that. It's an overreach, because ultimately he takes up some of the points that we'd be using to spend on ID cards anyway. All right. So now we have 15 points to spend on 5-point ID cards. I want to keep it in a budget, so I'm going to assume, JD Clicks, that you participate in Heroclix tournaments to some degree. Is this a yay or nay? While you're in the chat, let me know. Because if it's a yay, we're going to include a Wolverine ID card, but you need to assume on my behalf that we're talking about the Days of Future Past. Whoops, that's the old new Wolverine. The Days of Future Past wanted poster participation prize for your local Days of Future Past event. As well, I'm also going to assume that you've participated in a recent WKO or come across a Professor X ID card via participation in an event nearby. So there's another assumption that should be reasonable to get or not too difficult to get your hands on. If not, I'd say email me, but I don't want to promise anything because I don't know what my box looks like. It got absolutely just pillaged recently. But we have 5 points left over. Now, here's where we run into a problem with these 5 points. We have the option of either adding another ID card that you have access to, or we can spend it on a boxing ring if you have access to it. Let me know in the chat. Beyond that, we have spent the 2 ID cards for characters who aren't already bringing them. Okay, here's where things get a little tricky. Now, the opponent I played against in this event, you have 3 of the wanted IDs. That is fantastic. Which 3 do you have, JD? This is good news. Because I don't know if you have the first 2-month one, the first month 2 of them, or the second month double of them, but you have at least a Wolverine and a Colossus at minimum. Unfortunately, this is not the team that gets to use Colossus. I wish it was. It isn't. Is there a 75-point Colossus, Amber?
I don't know.
I don't think so. Which is a shame. Not all is lost. Anyway, from here, you have a Blackbird. Therefore, you have at least 4 really cool student IDs with which to work with. And you have 4 characters bringing in student IDs for free. So you have that to work with, and you have that to mull around. So you're either spending 5 points and getting 3 student IDs on an ID card, or you are spending 5 points on a boxing ring and getting 4 student ID cards. So there we go. There's one way you can go with a Blackbird. I can't believe I'm going to say this. Blackbird on a budget. Those words don't exist. Oh, all right. Creative license. That reminds me of the team that Remy thoroughly transferred with at Comic Warehouse. It was amazing. Yes. The other variant of this, the Blackbird is often replaced with Lila Cheney depending on ownership. I've also seen the Lila Cheney Deadpool variant, which is so beautiful if played correctly. And it was played correctly against me by one Mr. Kenji Kaneshiro. Kaneshiro? I can never remember. He corrected me, and then I forgot the correction because it was a couple years ago. And I, like a rude jerk, didn't bother to double check if I was saying it right. So, anyway. Yeah, so that Blackbird on a budget is kind of where we went with that. Yeah, it's been a great week this week. A lot of really great news that I'm really looking forward to talking about on the Metal Lab. That's for sure. Like I said, we're going to talk about news and stuff like that on the Metal Lab. This is more of a chilled out, build a team sort of thing, talk about teams sort of thing. So, one thing worth noting, guys, is that those Blackbird variants that I mentioned to you, these are teams you have to know how to beat. And one of the best ways to get at these teams is to get at that Blackbird. Murder that Blackbird. You've killed their mobility, but you have to be able to kill it where you can't be killed back. If that makes any degree of sense, because if you kill them, they're gonna try to kill you back. You just do that. So, yeah, that's been the last episode of Into the Mind of Heroclix Madness for this week. We'll be back next week with 2 more episodes. I think we're going to try to do 2 episodes of this a week where I kind of chill out, relax, tell you guys about my day, and then move into the world of Heroclix and try to build some teams and show you guys kind of how my night goes as it is. So if you have any questions later on, throw them in the comments below. If you're on the next episode of this, catch us in the chat, and I'll try to catch you and discuss whatever we're talking about. Next week, I'll probably go in more depth of how excited I am for some of the stuff, some of the news that's coming up, but I don't want to kill my excitement for the show on Monday. So if you are part of our Patreon at patreon.com/marriedwithclicks, this Sunday, so 2 days from today, we are having our patron hangout creative license. Give me 1 second. We're gonna have our patron hangout for the patrons. It's basically a chance for anybody who's a patron to chit chat with me and Amber and ask your any questions that you want. Whatever questions you're comfortable us answering. That's another thing. Is whatever questions you ask, we're likely to answer. So you have to be prepared to accept the answer, and that answer might take you places. It most certainly takes you a lot of places with us. Anyway, Brand of License does have a question. We're going to address this last question before we go. Can we use the Fast Forces Hulk to build a competitive Avengers team? I tell you what, with that, I'm actually going to cover that on the next episode of Inside the Mind of Madness so that I get a little bit of time to think about that, because building an Avengers team with that is very different than some of the stuff I have done with that figure. So hold on to that thought. We'll get back to you next week, probably Wednesday or Thursday, depending on how I'm feeling throughout the week, and go from there. All right. Meantime, guys, give yourselves a good evening, and we'll talk to you guys next time as we enter into the mind of madness.